Enron's rise and fall is one of the most shocking stories in corporate history. It took the company 16 years to grow its assets from $10 billion to $65 billion, but only 24 days to go bankrupt. At its peak, Enron was the seventh largest corporation in the US, valued at nearly $70 billion. It was hailed as a revolutionary business model, with a trading floor run by some of the brightest minds in America. The 2005 documentary Enron, The Smartest Guys in the Room, directed by Alex Gibney, explores the company's dramatic downfall. Enron's leaders orchestrated one of the largest frauds in history. Insiders quietly sold off $1 billion worth of stock as the company spiraled toward collapse, leaving ordinary employees and investors in the dark. When the truth came out, the fallout was catastrophic. 20,000 employees lost their jobs, and $2 billion in pensions and retirement savings vanished overnight. Some even suspected a political connection. Enron had been a major donor to George W. Bush's first presidential campaign, and Bush himself referred to Ken Lay as Kenny Boy. This isn't just a story about complicated financial deals or numbers. It's about people, greed, and the devastating consequences of unchecked power. Who was responsible for Enron's downfall? And how did one of the fastest-growing companies in history become the center of one of the biggest financial scandals the world has ever seen? This is Enron, where accountants had more imagination than Hollywood scriptwriters. You're watching The Money Game. Let's begin with Ken Lay, the man who founded Enron. He grew up as the son of a poor Baptist preacher, but had big dreams of building wealth. With a PhD in economics, he saw a significant opportunity in the tightly regulated natural gas industry. Lay believed government regulations were holding businesses back and became a vocal advocate for deregulation, the idea that free markets, not government, should drive the economy. In the beginning, Enron was a straightforward energy company, formed in 1985 through a merger of two natural gas pipeline companies, Internorth and Houston-based HNG. It focused on transporting and supplying natural gas. Ken Lay's vision was to capitalize on the newly deregulated energy markets, where prices would be set by supply and demand rather than government controls. Initially, Enron's business was simple. It operated pipelines and made money by moving natural gas from producers to customers. This was a stable, if unexciting, business model. However, Lay saw a bigger opportunity. He believed Enron could do more than just transport energy. It could become a major player in trading energy as a commodity, buying and selling natural gas at market-driven prices. From the start, Enron had powerful political connections, arguably the strongest tie between a single corporation and a presidential family in American history. George H.W. Bush played a key role in Enron's early success, helping the company secure billions in government subsidies for its international ventures. Ken Lay became a prominent figure in the push for deregulation, frequently promoted by Bush as a champion of free markets. Lay often spoke about integrity, portraying Enron as a company that operated with the highest ethical standards. However, an early incident cast serious doubt on these claims: the Valhalla scandal, also known as the Enron oil scandal, in 1987. The scandal involved Enron Oil, a division tasked with trading crude oil, which became embroiled in unauthorized trading, risky ventures akin to gambling, and financial misreporting. Despite this, Enron Oil consistently reported profits. The head of Enron Oil, Louis Bourget, had secretly siphoned over $3 million of company money into his personal account. The scheme involved fake offshore accounts, falsified records, and even ridiculous fake names, like M. Yas, which sounded like my ass. Enron's auditors raised red flags about Louis Bourget and his team, warning Ken Lay that they were recklessly gambling with company money. Despite these serious concerns, Lay decided to keep them in their roles. Instead of taking action, he sent a telex to Bourget that read, "Please keep making us millions." This division was the only part of Enron consistently generating profit, and Lay believed it was too valuable to shut down. However, just 2 months later, the traders lost $90 million, putting Enron's financial reserves at serious risk. Remarkably, they managed to bluff their way through the crisis, temporarily saving the company from collapse. Ultimately, Louis Bourget was convicted of fraud and served a year in jail. By then, Ken Lay had already shifted his focus, searching for new ways to sustain Enron's profits as his top moneymaker landed behind bars. Lay found his answer in Jeff Skilling, a visionary with bold, transformative ideas. Skilling quickly impressed Lay and was brought on board to redefine Enron's future. As Enron's new CEO, Skilling proposed a radical shift, transforming the company from a traditional energy provider into a financial powerhouse. His vision was to make Enron the stock market of energy, buying, selling, and trading energy contracts as if they were financial instruments. It was a groundbreaking concept, one that promised to revolutionize the energy industry. This magical idea quickly gained traction, and by 1992, Enron had become the largest buyer and seller of natural gas in North America. Skilling's vision transformed the company's focus from simply managing pipelines to revolutionizing how energy business was conducted. When Jeff Skilling joined Enron, he brought bold ideas, but he had one key condition: the adoption of a specific accounting method called mark-to-market accounting. This method allowed Enron to record the total projected profit of a deal on the day it was signed, regardless of when or even if the actual revenue would be received. For instance, if Enron secured a deal worth $50 million over the next 10 years, they could immediately report the entire amount as profit. Whether the deal succeeded, failed, or never generated a cent didn't matter. This accounting method painted a picture of extraordinary profits, making Enron appear far more valuable on paper than it truly was. The problem? These deals relied on subjective estimates, allowing Enron to assign any value they wanted. This gave them free rein to inflate earnings and mislead investors, laying the groundwork for one of the most deceptive financial practices in corporate history. Arthur Andersen, Enron's accounting firm, approved the method, and even the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, gave it the green light. With this system in place, Enron's profits became whatever Enron claimed they were. Next, Jeff's big move was the introduction of Enron Online, which was a game changer in commodity trading. It promised to replace the outdated, secretive systems with a transparent, user-friendly marketplace. Just a computer and a click, and anyone could trade instantly. Enron pitched it not just as a tool, but as a platform to reshape global markets and position themselves as pioneers of innovation. At the same time, Enron's stock was skyrocketing, tripling in value in just 2 years. Riding the wave of the late 90s stock market boom, Enron thrived by consistently meeting Wall Street's lofty expectations. Jeff Skilling even encouraged employees to pour their 401k savings into Enron stock, branding it as a can't-miss investment. But behind the curtain, the reality was very different. Enron was bleeding billions on disastrous ventures, like a massive power plant in India. They invested heavily in the project, but overlooked one key issue. India couldn't afford the overpriced electricity. Yet, despite these colossal failures, executives rewarded themselves with massive bonuses, based not on real profits, but on creative accounting and pure fiction. The pressure to keep up appearances at Enron was relentless. Failure simply wasn't an option. Desperate for new revenue, they ventured into ambitious markets like trading internet bandwidth. One of their boldest moves? Teaming up with Blockbuster to create a streaming service. The hype alone sent Enron's stock soaring by 34% in just 2 days, proving Wall Street loved their daring strategies. But there was one tiny problem. The technology wasn't ready. The deal fell apart. Still, in classic Enron fashion, they didn't let a failed venture stop them from reporting $53 million in imaginary profits from the project. It was a textbook example of how Enron valued appearances over reality, all to keep Wall Street happy. Enron pushed the limits of innovation by venturing into weather trading, selling futures based on temperature and rainfall. This bold move earned them a spot on Fortune's list of most innovative companies, but their financial stability was falling apart. In March 2001, Fortune reporter Bethany McLean began questioning Enron's financial practices. She asked CEO Jeff Skilling how the company made its money, but he couldn't answer and referred her to CFO Andy Fastow. Fastow and his team spent hours with McLean, but as the meeting ended, Fastow warned her not to make them look bad. Fastow, known for his unethical actions, was behind Enron's deceptive accounting, hiding massive debts in off-the-books entities. He was responsible for covering up the company's financial problems and illegal transactions. Despite losing money, Enron reported profits, creating a false image of success. Fasto used a method called structured finance to manipulate financial data and hide Enron's $30 billion in debt. He created fake companies like Jedi, Chuco, and Raptors to hide debt and keep the stock price high. The deception grew more complicated each quarter as they had to cover up previous lies. Fasto's most ambitious scheme was a company called LJM, which not only helped Enron, but made him $45 million. Even major banks like Merrill Lynch helped, buying and reselling Nigerian barges to inflate Enron's earnings. Enron's fraud involved not just the company, but also banks, lawyers, and accountants, all profiting from the scheme. Rather than stopping the corruption, they became part of it. Both Jeff Skilling and Ken Lay knew their financial tricks couldn't last forever. They turned their focus to California's deregulated energy market, hoping to find a new revenue source. After merging with Pacific Gas and Electric, Enron gained access to California's power grid, but what followed was a series of manipulations. Enron traders caused rolling blackouts by moving electricity out of the state to create artificial demand, then brought it back at inflated prices. They even convinced power plants to shut down temporarily to drive prices higher. While Californians suffered, Enron executives celebrated huge bonuses. Ken Lay famously dismissed concerns, saying, "My people will find a way to make money." This scheme cost California $30 billion. Many expected Ken Lay to leave Enron for the Bush administration, but instead, Jeff Skilling unexpectedly stepped down as CEO, likely to distance himself from the company's looming collapse. Lay took over again, but Enron's problems were already surfacing. Sharon Watkins, an Enron employee, wrote a letter to Lay exposing the company's fraud, while the Wall Street Journal published articles about CFO Andy Fasto's shady deals. The SEC launched an investigation, causing panic among investors. Meanwhile, in October 2001, Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, was shredding documents, more than a ton of paper. By then, Enron's collapse was imminent. When Skilling resigned, the stock was still trading between $40 and $50, but the company was already falling apart. In October, Enron reported a $618 million quarterly loss, and the special purpose entities used to hide debt could no longer cover up the financial crisis. Days later, the SEC opened an investigation into Enron's accounting practices. By December, Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The Enron bankruptcy shocked the world. In just a few months, $60 billion in market value vanished, making it the largest corporate bankruptcy in US history at the time. Tens of thousands of employees lost their jobs, and many saw their 401k savings wiped out as they had invested heavily in Enron stock, now worthless. Meanwhile, executives funneled $744 million in salaries and bonuses to top officials as the company collapsed. The US Senate held hearings, calling Enron executives to testify. CFO Andrew Fasto, the mastermind behind the fraud, invoked his Fifth Amendment rights and refused to answer questions. Fasto had used complex financial schemes to hide billions in debt, making himself hundreds of millions in the process. CEO Kenneth Lay also refused to testify, while former CEO Jeff Skilling and whistleblower Sharon Watkins did take the stand. Sharon Watkins exposed the internal warnings she had raised about Enron's accounting fraud, particularly the Raptor entities. These special purpose entities were used to hide losses by swapping debt for Enron stock, creating a false image of profitability. Watkins testified that CEO Ken Lay ignored her concerns, fearing an investigation would expose his own role. Meanwhile, Jeff Skilling denied knowing about Fasto's fraudulent schemes. Despite his denials, Fasto pled guilty to fraud and provided key evidence against Skilling and Lay, confirming they were fully aware of the fraud. In 2006, Skilling was convicted and sentenced to 24 years, but served only 14 before being released in 2018. Lay was also found guilty, but died of a heart attack before sentencing. Fasto's cooperation with prosecutors led to a reduced sentence of 6 years. Enron's collapse wasn't a one-off event. It shows how easily things can go wrong when people convince themselves they're not doing anything bad. Arthur Andersen, along with lawyers and bankers, all knew what was happening but shared the blame, so no one felt fully responsible. Arthur Andersen, once a respected accounting firm, was found guilty of covering up evidence. This destroyed its reputation, and it collapsed along with Enron. The Enron scandal is one of the biggest corporate frauds in history. For years, top executives fooled everyone while the company was celebrated as one of the largest in the US. Even with analysts and banks watching, the truth stayed hidden until everything fell apart. Enron's story is a powerful reminder of how greed and a lack of accountability can destroy even the biggest and most admired companies. Money never sleeps on Wall Street, and neither does on our channel. Watch all the mind-blowing Wall Street stories and intriguing money movies all here in one place. Like this video and subscribe to The Money Game to level up your financial game today.